All right, guys, this is the Binary Atlas podcast. We are on episode 13, and today we're going to be talking about the technology that we use to plan our family vacation. And Brandi is going to be taking the lead on this one since I didn't really do much. I drove every now and then, but she did all the planning for it. So
yeah, I have to. If I let him do the planning, we would have stayed right here at home. So
well, staycations, you know.
Well, I'm all for staycations if the kids aren't here.
But yeah, that's a good point.
So really the first thing you need to do when you're planning a family vacation, if you're wanting to utilize technology, is to look at website reviews. I recommend TripAdvisor. It's a really great place to get started because people are surprisingly honest about the reviews of places. Now, you have to take things with a grain of salt or sand, as the case may be. There are some people that will say, oh, I didn't like this beach. It was much too sandy. You're like, okay.
That's kind of funny.
You know, give a bad review to a beach because you've got sand in your knickers or whatever.
Knickers?
No, yeah, knickers.
Wow, knickers. Okay.
Well, yeah, why not? You know, or panties, as the case may be with Jonathan. So we knew that we wanted to go to a beach. It's something our kids have been talking about. And honestly, I haven't been to the beach since I was in my late teens, I say, like 19. And then I'm not sure how long it had been since you had been to the beach.
I was a teenager as well.
A teenager, yeah. So our kids had never been. Really, we had not done any really big family vacations. I mean, we had taken a little overnight thing to Hot Springs, did the whole Magic Springs thing.
Yeah.
And we did a day trip last year to the Memphis Zoo, which was really nice. But our main trip to the beach that we had been thinking about around 2020, well, we know what happened then. There was a little bit of a world pandemic. So we decided to put it off for a while. And then, you know, pandemic. And then last summer, we had a leak in our house and the house caught fire after that. And we just had some stuff happen. So with using technology, we wanted to make sure that we found a good place for kids and a place that wouldn't be too crowded. So that pretty much eliminated places like Florida. And, you know, we didn't want to go to Florida.
Well, you know, and we also wanted to narrow it down to a day's drive.
That's right, because we had a limited amount of time for our vacation, and we wanted to make sure that we weren't having to stop overnight along the way. So we started looking, and at first, looking at TripAdvisor, we started looking at places like the beaches in Mississippi or Alabama, like the Gulf Shores area. And then we turned to family and friend recommendations on good old Facebook. And I had several friends that recommended Dauphin Island, which is off the coast of Alabama. We had never been, but I had several friends who had been there, and they swore by it. In fact, I have one friend who goes there every single summer with her family. They just love it. They said it's a different way of life. It's, you know, slow, and it's not very crowded. Pretty much, it's very small when you look at the population of the island itself. It's mostly a tourism industry, and it is reachable by a bridge that's from the mainland, so you don't have to take a ferry. So we thought, okay, let's do this. So
now they did have a ferry.
Yes.
That went
from the other,
I guess it went to Gulf Shores.
Well, yeah, to another little fort island, but we didn't do that. We just took the standard bridge from the main part of Alabama into Dauphin Island. So at that point, you know, once you've found out where you're going to go, you need a place to sleep. So I started looking at different websites, Vacasa, Vrbo, Airbnb, Expedia, Hotels.com. Those are all good places to start. So you might as well use your technology for you.
I've heard of Airbnb, Expedia, and hotels, but I've not heard of Vacasa or Vrbo before.
Okay.
Are those newer or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Verbo is basically vacation rentals, and so is Vacasa. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It maybe Vacasa, potato, you know. But a lot of these work together too. Like, for example, for our vacation, I ended up looking on Verbo because that's where one of the recommendations came from one of my coworkers who had been there. She told me that they had rented a really great beach house. And so Jonathan and I were talking and we're like, okay, a beach house sounds really great. We don't really want to stay in a big high-rise condo or anything like a hotel. That was mostly me. Yeah.
Brandi was looking to give Brandi credit. She was looking at hotels and
I was looking everywhere.
Everywhere.
Well,
and I was the one that kind of narrowed it down that if we were going to do this, because if you're going to be spending X amount of money anyway, I kind of wanted the private house with beach access.
Exactly. And there were some condos that had that beach access, but you're sharing it with a lot of people. And, you know, I think we could have made a condo work if we had to, but just the whole idea of being around a whole lot of people, that was not the kind of vacation we wanted. So we kind of used this technology that we had to our advantage. So searching on Verbo, I mean, it's a very easy website to use, and that's vrbo.com. I was able to say, enter in the dates that we wanted and put how many bedrooms were the minimum, how many bathrooms were the minimum, and check off amenities like, Wi-Fi access or keyless entry. And one of the other considerations we had was we thought if we had either a condo or a beach house that had some sort of outdoor parking with an accessible standard outlet, we would be able to charge our electric vehicle. It wouldn't be as fast as our charging network at home or one of the travel chargers, but we knew that we could at least keep it going.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this, though. When we were looking for that, there was no setting to specifically search for that.
There was not.
You kind of made assumptions based on pictures. You thought,
correct.
Oh, you zoomed in, that looks like an outdoor outlet.
Yes, that's what I did. That one was just one of the considerations. That wasn't one that I was able to specify. Now, you can specify that on some locations probably, but Dauphin Island, there is no supercharger there on the island.
And we're talking about Tesla, right? So we have a Tesla, so we supercharged all the way there and all the way back. So when we're talking about looking for a charging network, we were specifically looking for Tesla charging networks.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't know if there's another. I couldn't find one.
Mobile, Alabama was the closest one as you're going north of Dauphin Island.
Yes, but we ended up not stopping there because we stopped somewhere in Mississippi first.
Correct.
But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So, I filtered the amenities, and with our family, I put a minimum of 3 bedrooms because we knew that our children would not want to share, which is, they're a boy and a girl. It's fine. They did not have to share. And I put a minimum of 2 bathrooms just because that works better for our family. And I figured we might as well check this out and see what we could find. And then, of course, we wanted Wi-Fi because my husband's job requires him to be on call. And even though he was on vacation, he needed to have Wi-Fi access just in case an emergency came up. So we were able to find what we liked. And even on the Verbo app, which strangely enough connected us to a Vacasa property, which Vacasa is basically a property management firm. And they have their own website, but they also put their listings on Verbo. So I found them on Verbo. I did my initial payment on Verbo, but then when I had to do my second payment, it was over on Vacasa.
Okay.
Yeah. And Vacasa has an app that you can download on your smartphone so that you can easily chat with maintenance or, their ground crew, because basically they have local people. And we actually encountered one of those local people while we were there, because our particular property, there was a broken chair that was a safety hazard. So we were able to get them out there to get rid of that chair so that nobody would get hurt. So having that app was really helpful. And then as far as, technology at our actual house, once we picked it out, we were told that it was a keyless entry system. So it was basically a lock with a code that resets between guests. So it makes it super easy to check in, because they have these automated email systems so that you get the code a day before your trip. And you don't have to wait or be there at a certain time. So
yeah, and it worked really well.
It really did, because we were there pretty late at night. We ended up getting there around 9:00 p.m. And after driving all day, the last thing we would want to do is wait on somebody to come unlock a place for us. So anyway, pros and cons of Vrbo. I mean, the pros obviously were the big shorting, but like I can't even talk. I'm sorry. It's been a day. The sorting features, just being able to sort by price range. Because there were some wonderful beach houses there. But, when I look at some of the prices on some of those beach houses, it was like, no, that's not in our price range. So I was able to sort by pricing. I was able to sort by number of bedrooms. And ultimately, we ended up settling on a house that was a little bit bigger than what we needed, but it was actually a little cheaper than some of the ones that only had 3 bedrooms. So we had ended up with a 4-bedroom, 2-bath beach house, and it was lovely. So we were able to do that. The cons of Vrbo, it can be a little difficult to navigate on the back end once you've done your booking. I noticed like the initial payment is due right away. So depending on the price of your vacation, ours, we had to pay half and then pay another half about a month before the vacation. So that first payment was super easy. I had to do it right away, no problem. And then I went back on the website, signing in at Vrbo, trying to find a place to make my second payment later on. It wasn't quite due yet, but I thought I could go ahead and pay the payment. Could not find anything. It was just not there. So I think that might have been an issue with the fact that it was a Vacasa property, because a little bit later, after I had messaged the, technical support of Vrbo, I received a Vacasa message saying that they would send me an invoice when it was time for me to pay. So there wasn't really an option to pay early. So that was a little bit annoying, but not a deal breaker.
It's kind of like Vacasa was the actual property and Vrbo was just a property marketplace where a bunch of people list stuff.
Correct. So if I had actually booked through Vacasa,
it would have been a little different.
It might have been a little different, but so that was just one of the small irritations. But I'm going to let Jonathan talk a little bit about what we chose as far as keeping our kids entertained on a 10-hour plus drive.
So when it comes to the technology we used on the trip itself, our main one is our cell phones, right? So we use a cell phone plan by a company called Visible. They are a monthly pay-as-you-go service that is, I think it wasn't before, but is now owned by Verizon. They use Verizon towers. A part of that fee that we pay is that every phone has tethering. So each of our kids have their own cell phone. So they would tether their device they were using. Meredith, our daughter, had her iPad, so she was doing a lot of Netflix and Disney Plus and things like that. She would draw and things like that on it. Our son doesn't have a tablet, but he wanted to bring the Nintendo Switch, so we had a Nintendo Switch on the ride. They would tether that, and that's what they did.
Or just
trip.
Watch videos on their phone. Of course, the Tesla vehicle also has charging ports in it, so they were able to keep the phones
there's
charged.
There's USB ports at the back, so they were able to keep. We had to make the other technology piece is we had to make sure that we had the adapters we needed to make sure that those devices could either be charged while they were using them or just be plugged into charge in general. We had our cell phones, but I was driving. Brandi is a big reader, so she read books most of that trip.
I did. And I used an older Amazon Fire tablet that our daughter had outgrown. I never have had a Kindle, but I've often used the Kindle app on my phone. And I figured, the tablet still works. It's a little slow. It doesn't really do well for the games and the videos that she wants to do, but it is doing just fine as just a basic Kindle reader for me. So that's what I used.
And as far as the trip itself goes, right? So planning the trip when it comes to at least the driving portion of it. So we have a Tesla, which means that our planning is pretty much done for us by the car. We plug in the destination, and the Tesla, based on road conditions and the speed limits, will tell you where you need to stop to charge, how long you need to be there to charge before you can head to your next charging destination.
Yes, so it takes over the GPS for you.
Now, the only bad thing about that, and this is a con for Tesla, and I've always thought it was a con, is that you can't pre-plan it, right?
It's difficult.
You've got to be in the car to do it. Now, you can go to Tesla's website and they have a map planning tool where you can pick your model car. But the problem with that tool is we have a Model 3, but an older Model 3. So if you choose the Model 3 from their list, it's the newer Model 3, which gets more mileage than our car does.
Right.
So it's not really an accurate plan.
It isn't.
The car is. The car is accurate. The car knows how much mileage it's got and all that kind of stuff. So it's accurate. Now, the other tool I used and what you guys can use is called a Better Route Planner. All right. That is a website. They also have an app for your phone. I wouldn't use this during the trip because Tesla takes care of that in the car, but you can plug in your car, you can plug in its max mileage, you can plug in all the specific numbers about your car and tell it that you want Tesla charging and then see what it maps out, right? It gave us 3 possible routes that we could have taken. We ended up taking 5 different routes.
Pretty much.
So what happened is I was driving and I was using auto drive, autopilot on the car, and it wanted to take an exit. And I'm like, no, that's not the right exit. I overrode the car and we blew past the exit and it was the right exit. So that was my bad.
Yes. And then I missed a turn because this is going to sound really silly, but apparently with Tesla, if you're going to use of course, the auto drive is kind of a beta feature right now, isn't it? Apparently, it's based on profile. And so we had never set up this beta feature on my profile, and I didn't know. Jonathan was asleep when I went into what I thought was auto drive. It wasn't. I was just on cruise control with lane assist, I guess. It keeps you in the lane. So the car didn't take the exit because it wasn't auto driving and I didn't know. And I realized it as I was missing the exit. And at that point, the car rerouted me. So out of those 3 different routes we could have taken, I think we took a little bit of each of them. Yeah,
but the good thing is that even missing both those turns and having to reroute twice, there was still a charging station within reach for us to stop and charge. We were not left with stranded, not being able to charge because we didn't follow the route exactly.
Yeah. So Tesla did a great job as far as, navigating that. Now, of course, if you don't have an electric vehicle and you just want to use technology to plan your trip, there's different places like Google Maps and MapQuest that you can kind of pre-plan your trip and plan ahead for stops, especially like if you're needing to stop overnight or anything like that. You can kind of choose the best route. Of course, most people these days are going to have some sort of GPS, whether it's using their phone or, having built into the car. This is not the days of pulling out a giant map or an atlas.
I remember those days.
Do you remember printing off the MapQuest?
No.
Okay.
When I was growing up, my parents had the big foldable maps in the glove box.
Mine did too, yeah.
And then it skipped for us, right? So I didn't see anything else until phones were a thing that had maps on them.
Gotcha. So. Well, I mean, back when, the internet was young, but I didn't have smartphone yet, I would print off the MapQuest. And of course, then you're sitting there driving, holding the paper trying to make sure that you don't miss the turn. And honestly, before GPS, I have no idea how people got anywhere. Did they just drive and find it? I just can't imagine. But I guess, people have been going on vacations for a long time. So maybe word of mouth. I don't know. We were able to figure out what we wanted to do on Dauphin Island before we even got there by searching on the internet.
You got to remember, every gas station had the giant thing of maps.
That's true. So,
you remember those carousels?
Yes.
So yeah, there was always information about how to get somewhere. It was just
yes, but like, how would you know where you wanted to go? It's just interesting the way technology's changed and helped people be able to do that. So, of course, with us having an electric vehicle, pros and cons. The pro is you don't have to get gas. The con is you do have to stop a little more often because depending on what kind of vehicle you drive, let's say your vehicle's range is 500 miles. Well, with our older Model 3 Tesla, maybe our range is 200 miles, but it doesn't want to make you wait until you're down to nothing. So we were maybe stopping sometimes after 150 miles or sometimes after 100 miles, depending on the availability of the next charging station.
It's the distance between,
It is. And then each of those stops are going to be a little bit longer. So like, whereas if you stop and get gas and there is no line and you're able to get gas right away, maybe you're there 5 minutes. Maybe 10 if you go inside, use the facilities, whatever.
I think our longest stop was about 30.
Actually,
we had one that was a 30-minute.
No, we had one that was more than that. We had the one that was like 50 minutes at the shopping mall.
That was because we chose to, though?
It recommended that we do it, if I'm remembering correctly.
I thought the longest recommendation we had was 35 minutes.
It's possible. Who knows? We don't know. But the thing is, when you would pull up to these charging stations based on what Tesla told you, it would tell you how long you needed to charge in order to get to the next charging station. Now, you were always able to charge longer, and we have chosen to do that before,
a couple times,
especially when it was the shopping mall. We're like, well, let's just go in the mall for a little bit, get cooled off, get something to drink, and we just let it charge while we were in there. The good news, too, about these Tesla superchargers is, you may worry about it costing a whole lot. I kind of did a cost scenario here. From Dardanelle, where we live, to Dauphin Island, according to Google Maps, it's about 552.4 miles. That's one way, going US 49 south. We did travel that route for the most part until we had to veer off for different charging networks. So that's like your most direct route with a traditional vehicle. And if you figured a vehicle having about 30 miles per gallon and assuming gas is about $3.50 per gallon, that's about $130 you would spend for gas round trip. Now, that's just there and back. That's not like if you're going to be driving around a lot.
So that is round trip going there and coming back.
Correct. Whereas our total cost for charging at the Tesla superchargers for the trip was $118.95. That does include a last stop, though, where we charged longer than we had to at a shopping mall.
Because they told us that we would make it home on the charge that we had, but at like 9% or 6%.
Yes.
And we were like, it's a little too close.
It was a little close, and the kids were tired. So we just went ahead and stopped and went ahead and charged. So really, those last couple of charges, I guess, was around $15. So really, for the trip itself, it was closer to $103. So it was less than gas. Of course, a lot less than flying. So the trip to actually get there, the cost of charging the Tesla, it wasn't bad at all, especially a trip to another state. And the way we had to drive from Arkansas, we went briefly through Tennessee, and then we headed into Mississippi, where we spent most of our trip actually in Mississippi, because we went south through Mississippi and then went slightly over into Alabama to get to Dauphin Island. So But overall, I mean, just having access to all of this technology, it makes planning a vacation, I think, so easy because you have so much information at your fingertips. You're able to look at reviews with TripAdvisor.
Oh, yeah.
And able to do all sorts of planning and even know ahead of time what's going to happen and prepare yourself. Like, for example, with our trip, before we went, we were considering taking our kids to the aquarium on Dauphin Island. There's a little small place that would have been a nice little outing. And we were able to find out before we even left that that was going to be closed for renovations. So just preparing our kids saying, hey, you know, we're just going to hang out at the beach. Luckily, we have a teenager and a preteen, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, because they don't want to be seen with us anyway. So,
but no, overall, all the technology things that Brandi used, she planned this trip to a T. We had no issues. It was a smooth experience. And honestly, like she said, I couldn't imagine us having planned this without the use of all those tools that you
used. No, definitely not. The websites and everything, it just made it so much easier. And while we weren't, you know, tethered to our technology once we got there, just having it was helpful because we still had access to our GPS. We were able to find a souvenir shop. We were able to communicate back home with you know, the person who was taking care of our dogs for us. Thanks, Mom. And just, you know, handle everything. So overall, I mean, we still need to unplug some, but it's nice to be plugged in while you're doing the planning of the unplugging, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
It does. But I put down a list of things in the show notes, like of our actual charging amounts for Tesla, if anyone's interested in that. And then I think that's it for us this week.
So like she said, a lot of everything we talked about is going to be in the show notes. You'll see a link in the description down below for that. Depending on what platform you're listening to or watching this on, because this is our first time doing the podcast via video.
Yes, we apologize for our appearance. It's been a day. It's been a fun day. About 102 degrees here in Arkansas.
Yeah. So depending on what platform you're on, please if you're on YouTube watching this, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you know when we post more content. Please feel free to go to our website, binaryatlas.com. There's all kinds of stuff there, past shows you can go read up on. And, you know, we even got a merch store if you're interested in that kind of thing. Otherwise, this is Jonathan and Brandi. We really appreciate you guys tuning into this podcast, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you.